Prison Pod Productions, and the Awakening Exchange, brings you inside Death Row, North Carolina. You will hear the stories from the men living on death row. These are their stories. The stories are in their own words. Welcome to Death Row.
Hi, this is JJ, coming at you again from Central Prison, home to North Carolina's Death Row, Raleigh, North Carolina. On this podcast, I've spoken about practical jokes, rural life, the rise and fall of my romantic relationship with my little magpie, executions, life on death row, and I've even read my poetry. Today's subject will be a new flavor to be savored, enjoyed, and tasted again. Rightly speaking, coming up with a title for these stories is, as a rule, relatively easy. The few times I've asked Miss Val to add a title. At the moment, my working title for this is The Land Remembers. I consider myself as being a sensitive. Webster's Dictionary defines sensitive as follows. Sensitive, noun, used first in 1838. A person having occult or psychical abilities. And to break that down more, the word occult isn't used in the sense of black magic and demons, but as something not detectable by clinical methods, and psychical as lying outside the sphere of science. And I totally agree with those definitions. Also, I define being a sensitive as someone that senses things that most can't feel. I can, I believe, sense the atmosphere of emotions in people. I can read the currents in a room or know when something is about to happen. Maybe I feel loose energies as they begin to coalesce or manifest. I feel the tensions that others seem to miss. And I come by this sixth sense, I suspect, due to living with an unpredictable parent. Your parents are supposed to be someone you can trust. Not so in my home. My stepdad was volatile and unpredictable. I suspect my self-defense mechanism is this ability I developed. I had to be able to read his moods, his looks, his body posture, his very thoughts, and I had to do it fast. I suffer from complex PTSD. This is a gift from my stepdad, the generous man he is, generous with his abuse to my siblings and my mom as well, as I could and often did get missing while she could not. As it happens, my sensitivity didn't just apply to people, it also applied to places, to land. Growing up in rural western North Carolina, I often walked trails, paths, and other areas that took me away from Dad's anger. One particular place, a gravel road near home, Nannytown Road by name, was one that took me by a cow pasture. I often walked there as it was how I got to my grandparents' home or my Aunt Hazel's house. And here comes something that might be hard to believe, but the land spoke to me. Well, it didn't speak to me in audible words, but with impressions. It was like I'd been transported back decades in the past, to the time when the pasture was being logged of its timber. I could almost see trucks of a bygone era going up and down the road. Well, not trucks plural, just a single truck. And I didn't physically observe it, but I knew it was there nonetheless. There was a TV show that I used to watch when I was a kid called The Waltons. It was set around the time of World War I. The truck that the lead character, John Walton, drove was the type of truck I envisioned on that dirt road. I don't know what model it was, but it could have been a Model T. And I could almost smell the exhaust. It was so real. I had the impression that the driver of that truck had been drinking. Why, I don't know. And I wasn't alone. The very land itself, the roadway, the pasture, the trees, it was all aware of me. The very air was different. And the connection I felt, while alien and surreal, was not one of well, I don't know. I just felt acceptance. I didn't try to understand it or define it. It just was, and it felt right. I didn't experience this every time I walked on that stretch of road. Never on rainy days, never when clouds obscured the sun, never when I was with someone, and never at night. It was a secret between me and the spirit of the earth. And when I was barefooted, as I often like to be, it was more apt to happen. Like that gave me an unfettered connection with the land. Strangely enough, I dreamt of that place yesterday. I knew I was going to write this story, and I fancied the spirit of that place reached out to me while I slept, as the mind is often too busy to hear those timeless whispers while awake. I was transported back to a place from my childhood, a place that let me know I was still remembered fondly, that I was not forgotten. Yin and yang, good and evil. And if that stretch of road can be described as good, another place I ventured can all be described as evil. As I said, I often walked in the woods and fields, sometimes venturing where I had no business being. One such time found me in a part of the woods that, while not far from home, was a place I'd never been before or since. I mostly preferred the solitude of the woods. To be in a fallow field or a cow pasture was okay, dirt roads too, but to be in the nooks and crannies of the forest was even better. And I knew the landowners for miles around. All knew me as well. Some made it known to me that I wasn't welcome on their land. If the stories I'd heard from my grandpa Jaynes were true, some of the landowners had good reason to keep me away. And while my grandpa was prone to tell stories and tall tales to us kids, some of his stories were ones I wasn't meant to hear. So I avoided certain areas in my wanderings. One summer day found me in an area I'd never been before, and that in itself was odd, because it was no more than a mile from home, probably less. I suspected it belonged to a man named Brewer Nanny. Brewer lived a good ways off Horn Mill Road, had no close neighbors nor wanted any. He was always genial when us kids saw him, and he always drove a tractor in the community. He drove slow enough that I once took his picture with a disposable camera, and the photo wasn't even blurred by the motion of the tractor. Anyway, there I was, walking with no real destination in mind, but still knowing vaguely that I wanted to go in a certain area. It was maybe a quarter mile from Brewer's isolated home. One minute, I'm walking an old logging road, birds singing, sun shining warmly. The next minute, I'm in a part of the forest that was gloomy and quiet. Not the natural quiet of a secluded glade, but like the forest was holding its breath, so as not to give itself away to me, an intruder and an interloper. Chill bumps broke out on my arms and neck, and shivers of apprehension wreaked havoc with my spine. I felt I was being watched. Maybe Brewer was behind a screen of vines and scrub, peering out at me, I thought. That in itself was creepy. No one knew where I was, and I wasn't expected home at any specific time. Not that I thought Brewer was an axe murderer or anything, but no one thought Ed Gein was anything but a genial man till they found out otherwise. I looked around me, not expecting to see anyone. Then I saw it. At the end of the grown-over area I stood in, up on a ridge, stood a tree. Trees, as a rule, don't scare me. As kids, me and my siblings had our own climbing trees. We climbed our trees and dared each other to get to the very top and to make the tree sway to and fro. Dangerous and scary, but in a fun way. Not so this tree. It was like a sentinel that towered over the area, covered in vines, age, and an invisible shroud of evil. I became aware of the ground I stood on more and more. I was mentally repelled, but at the same time, I felt like that lone tree wanted something from me. If not my life, then a piece of my soul. and if I'd learned some dark, nefarious rites that caused blood to soak the soil of that place, that the sentinel tree's very roots had been watered by such activities, I would have very well believed it. Even now, as I write these words, I have goosebumps, and a part of my brain remembers. Even genetic memory recalls such things and tells me I didn't imagine them. As if coming out of a trance, I ran fast and far, knowing that if I stayed a moment longer, I wouldn't be allowed to leave. The very earth, painted as it was, would, I imagined, pull me down to join the remains of other victims, other sacrifices. I never went back there, and I never told anyone what happened. I was a kid. Ridicule would have been a response I would have received from others. Everyone knows kids have vivid imaginations. They seek attention, so they lie. So I kept my silence. But I haven't forgotten. Nor has the land. It remembers, both good and bad. And to leave you, fellow listener, on a more positive but no less bizarre note, I have one more experience to share. I've mentioned in a previous segment that I attended Union Mills School, that in an earlier incarnation, the school housed kids that, due to circumstances beyond their control, weren't able to live at home. The boys' dormitory was behind the gymnasium. A sidewalk led back there. After the dormitory was closed down and most of the outbuildings on the campus donated to some sort of missionary society, I felt drawn to those deserted areas. I dreamt of them many times. I felt a type of residual energy from that dorm. I was drawn there. And the strange thing was that I felt like I was invited to go there. The pull was so strong that I eventually got up early one Saturday morning in the summertime and went exploring there. I don't recall what I told my parents, if I told them anything at all. I'm sure I went before they got out of bed. I had to walk there, but it was only around 2 miles or so from home, surely no more than 3 miles at most. When I got there, I walked around the main school building, making sure I was alone. As expected, I was the only person there. I walked a disused concrete sidewalk behind the gym. I saw the dormitory. It was built of old red brick, same as the school and the gym. It had a 1950s feel to it. As I got closer, I discovered a basketball goal bolted to a wall with a cracked concrete half-court covered in weeds. I could almost hear the voices of the boys that had played there. Walking a bit more, I came to the back of the dorm. I wanted to go inside. I tried the door, locked. I tried a window, unlocked. Taking that as an invitation, I opened it and crawled through. Inside, the dorms were small and had orange carpeting, but the rooms were larger than the bedroom I shared with my brother Paul. Yet I felt they were small. Strange that. I knew I wouldn't be found out if I didn't venture far. It was as I dreamt it, and I wasn't surprised at all. I sat on that dingy orange carpet, just drank in the atmosphere. Felt like I'd been a kid there in the 1950s. I knew my life had been cut short, but that I enjoyed my time there, that it was peaceful. As before, on the gravel road, I felt acceptance. But I knew I had lived there. I don't try to explain it because it defies explanation. Years later, I'd return, again going in through the same window. And I still dreamt of that place. But the dreams are like memories. While they are oddly comforting, I've woken from those dreams with such a sense of longing that tears fill my eyes, even as they fill my eyes now as I write this. How do you explain these events I experienced? Do you chalk it all up to a vivid imagination? I do not. Yet I feel like I actually lived in that dorm and that I was killed or killed myself. Were the residual emotions of a young boy strong enough to reach me because I was attuned to such things? I'll leave you to be the judge of that. Over the decades of my incarceration, I've read literally thousands of books. A large number of them have been about unexplained phenomena. I am well acquainted with the theories of reincarnation, of ghosts and poltergeists, and ley lines. Ley lines are spelled Leyline. Ever heard of ley lines? The theory goes that the earth has lines of energy. And if you look at a map at how some of the pagan religious sites and Christian churches in both Europe and the UK follow set lines discernible on said map, you'll find stories of phenomena not easily explained, where these ley lines converge. Ancient people and civilizations long lost to modern man may have understood these places of energy, of power, of convergence. Maybe they weren't so simple after all. And maybe, just maybe, our genes hold a clue to this sixth sense. Those ancient people needed every tool at their disposal to survive. Maybe one day science will solve the mystery of people like me, sensitives. I need no scientist to tell me I experienced something real. And on occasion, I still have a residual amount of this sixth sense. But sometimes knowing what will happen isn't enough to change the outcome. I appreciate y'all listening to these events I experienced. I've never told these stories before. Make of them what you will. Also, there's been a change here at Central Prison. Text behind is no longer an option of contact, and some of my other contact information has changed. I'd appreciate some feedback. Please leave something under the comment section of this site, or I can be reached at gettingout.com. My full name is Jaynes Edward Jaynes. My inmate number is 020-6197, or you can write me at this following address, Jaynes Edward Jaynes, number 020-6197. Again, I appreciate y'all listening to my stories. Just remember, the world isn't just black and white. Sometimes there are gray areas. Thank you. The end, Val.